Welcome to the Grey Atom YouTube channel. Here you'll get everything from a webinar, student diary, data science Fridays where your questions are answered. Basically, everything that you need to get yourself upskilled in data sciences. Hit the subscribe button, click on the bell icon, have a look at the videos, and if you find something interesting, don't forget to like it. Follow us socially, and we will be there always serving you the best.
Hi, Nishant.
Yeah, hi Vijay.
Okay, great. So I think we can start now. Guys, thank you for your participation. So today we have Nishant Gupta as our speaker. He'll be taking you all through a very hands-on and a very detailed section on multi-layer perceptron. To give a short brief about Nishant, he's a data scientist with more than 4 years of industrial experience, holding his master's in the field of from Triple IT Bangalore. He has been working in the R&D domain and is adept in machine learning tools like Python, Keras, TensorFlow, and PySpark to build models using regression, multi-layer perceptron, and more, for various clients and businesses. He has always looked forward to guide and mentor the passionate new guys in data sciences. So here's Nishant, and he'll be starting. Nishant, people will be asking you questions via chat. So guys, you can just ping your questions to Nishant, and he'll be addressing those. And also, we'll be keeping a 10 minutes Q&A in the end as well. So all the best, Nishant. And guys, make the most out of the session. I hope this session proves fruitful to you. Here's Nishant.
So hi guys, welcome to the session. So today I will be teaching you, basically I will be covering the concepts of perceptron and neural network. So yeah, let's see what is basically perceptron is all about. So perceptron is nothing but a classifier. So what is a classifier? Classifier is something like, for example, I gave machine some examples of cat or dog. So it will be able to classify into a new example into a whether it is a cat or a dog. So how do we do it? So we provide some training data to the machine, like there could be input features like shape of nose, or maybe like size, height, and color of the animal. So you might have heard about logistic regressions, which are a part of classical machine learning technique. So basically, perceptron is nothing, but it is as same as logistic regression. So just a minute. Yeah. So yeah, you have, all like in our brain, there are a lot of neurons and which are interconnected to each other. So in a similar way, neural network has lot of perceptrons interconnected to each other, and every perceptron is called a neuron. So neural network is same as like our brain functions. So there are a lot of perceptrons in a neural network. Yeah. So what the key takeaway of today's lessons will be like what is perceptron and what are its practical use cases, where do we use it, what are its limitations, and just a minute. Yeah, so how is actually perceptron able to classify into its class, basically whether that animal is a cat or a dog. So for example, let's see few examples. Like after cat and dog, let's say this is an AND gate, and so for an AND gate, the product will be like 0 if both are 0, and it will be 1 if both are 1. So if we see the diagram over here, so this will be like 1, and this output will be zeros. So and for OR gate, so if any of them will be 1, then it is 1. So if we see the diagrams here, for XOR gate, the conditions are like any of them is like both should not be same. Then the output is 1. So if we see here, we can draw a in case of AND gate, we can draw a separator like a decision boundary over here. Anything below than that is categorized as 0, and that white circle is categorized as 1. So in case of AND gate and OR gate, it is possible. But whereas in case of XOR gate, we can't draw a linear decision boundary over here. So we can see the two examples lies inside these two boundaries, whereas the two other examples lies outside. So here, this white circle represents as basically in this case 0, and dark circles represent as 1. So basically these both examples could be learned using perceptron, as they can be classified. Some chat, some disturbance is coming. Hello. Yeah, just some disturbance is coming. Okay.
Yeah, I think someone was had gone on mute, so I just muted him.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So what I was covering was like these both examples and an OR gate could be separated using a linear decision boundary, whereas in case of XOR gate, they can't be separated. We have to make a non-linear decision boundary like this. Basically. So inside this boundary, the things are 1 and outside that are 0. So let's go ahead.
Nishan,
Yeah.
I have a doubt.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, hi, guys. Like I said, everyone's gonna be on mute. If you all have a doubt, just ping him, okay? And he'll be able to address that.
Vijay, one more thing, I'm not able to go to the next slide directly with some key. I have to scroll.
Yeah. I think for the chat, you'll have to keep.
No. For the slides, I think it's.
I don't know. It might.
I have to put, I think, in the slideshow.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, so I saw someone has a doubt. Would be great if he can write it into chat meanwhile. Let me open the chat window. Yeah, so the doubt is, do XOR gate behaves like SVM? So yeah, so basically in SVM, there are two kinds of SVMs. So one is linear SVM, which has only ability to learn linear decision boundary, whereas there are non-linear SVMs, basically those utilize kernel tricks, which can learn non-linear decision boundaries. So it depends like which kind of SVM you are using. And XOR gate doesn't behave like SVM. SVM can be used to model XOR gate basically. And that is kernel trick SVM could be used. So which can learn nonlinear decision boundaries. So did I answer your question? Okay, sure. Let's go ahead. It's going not, okay, fine. So let's see in detail what is perceptron. So the topmost figure which you can see is kind of neural network, looks similar to our brain neuron network. And just a neuron, you can see here the dark black circle, that is nothing but a perceptron. So why this yellow color and the orange color are there? So this is basically represents the input layer, and this is basically output layer. And all the neurons in between that are called hidden. Those are called the hidden layers, and then those are called the hidden neurons. Okay, so let's speak into what is perceptron basically. So this left side is all called neural network. Let's say what is this one node all about? So this is basically single layer perceptron. The single layer perceptron will have like, yeah, so This is input layer and this is output layer. So it will have only input and output layer, and it will not have this all like hidden layers. So what happens is, from every input layer there would be a weight going to the output layer, and there will be some activation functions in the output layer, after which the output will come. We'll see in detail what are the weights and activation functions are. But for now, we have absorbed like what is perceptron. So perceptron is basically used for binary classification. It could be multi-classification as well. So, and on a lighter note, it can be used for regression also. So let me put here what is difference between classification and regression. So basically, for example, the cat and dog example which I gave you, that is used for classification. And that labels would be there for some data set, and then new cat or dog would come, maybe of different breed, and you will have to classify it into its corresponding class. Whereas in case of regression, basically the label or response variable is a continuous one. So for example, you might be asked to predict the car mileage utilizing the features like displacement, number of cylinders, or maybe number of gears, and lot of features. So in that, labels are not there. So you have to it's basically continuous. Labels are there. There will be training data, but those will be continuous. So in supervised learning, there are labels always there. In case of classification, the labels are like 0, 1, or maybe in multi-class, like till what like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in case of regression, the response variable or the label which you call is continuous in nature. So for example, car mileage is continuous. It could be anything. It could be in decimals. It could be 8.5. It could be 10. It could be 10.3. So yeah. So we have already seen perceptron is a basic building block of the neural network. And so neural network have higher capacity to learn as compared to this small perceptron. Any doubt so far? Okay. Let's go ahead. So let's see. This is not scrolling properly. So let's see what a classifier does. Yeah. So let's consider an example of like we want to predict whether a person or a guy would be watching a game of football or not. So let's take 3 features. So one of the first feature would be like whether the league is a premium one or not, and second one whether the Manchester is playing or not, whether the game is friendly or not. Let's say we are considering these 3 features. By utilizing that, we will be predicting whether the person would be watching a football game or not. So there could be 2 type of personalities. One who are very keen on watching football game, and the second who will watch very less often. So the first one will watch anyway. For them it doesn't depend like whether it is a premium league or not. So, and for the second one, yes, if it is really important, then they will watch. So let me explain you through this example. So you can see this below diagram. So I told you 3 variables by which we are trying to predict whether we will be watching, whether the person will be watching football match or not. So this basically y-axis is nothing. It's basically will give you a class or whether he will watch or not. So let's say this is 1, where crosses are made. This y-axis is 1, and this x-axis is 0. He's not watched. And what is the x-axis basically represents here is it is basically represents the probability that it is a premium league. So basically, if the probability is less than 0.5, let's say the person doesn't watch. So these circles are there, orange circles, white circles, and the probability is greater than 0.5. You can see cross. So he will watch. So basically, cross represents the person will watch, and circle represents the person will not watch. So from this data, it's quite evident that if it's less than 0.5, he will watch, and greater than 0.5, he will not watch, and greater than 0.5, he will watch. So what are these population all about? If it's greater than 0.5, still he's not watching, because he's kind of a personality. For him, it doesn't matter. He used to watch very important matches. So that's why, despite having the probability of the Premium League greater than 0.5, he's not watching the game. And what about these persons? These persons are like very curious. They like football so much. So even if it is not a Premium League, they will end up in buying. They will end up in watching. Okay, so if I want to build a linear boundary, or maybe non-linear, whatever separates this, what could be the possible solution? So basically, the one which is drawn over here separates out these both classes. So it is able to separate out this class as well and this class as well. So yeah, if these examples would not have been there, then the decision boundary would have been like straight pass through. Yeah, so what we are trying to learn here is what will be the separating boundary which will be able to separate these positive or negative class. By positive or negative means 1 and 0, whether he will watch or not watch. So how do you represent the equation of this boundary? You can basically represent using mx plus c, where m is the slope and c is nothing but an intercept, right? So what does logistic regression of perceptron does? For like logistic regression and perceptron, both are same objective function. We will try to find linear classifier boundary over here, and so basically their objective is to come up with this boundary. So any doubt so far? I will proceed then. So am I going too fast? Can anyone please let me know if I'm going too fast? Okay, what about others? What about others? Okay. So which concept this one? Okay. Okay. So what I was trying to tell here is, so I took an example of a classification problem. The problem was basically whether a person will watch the football match or not. Given that we have only one feature, whether it is a premium league or not, and the x-axis represents basically the probability of a premium league, and y-axis represents whether the person will watch or not. So let's see what is happening over here. So I'm saying that in general, people, if the premium league probability is less than 0.5, the people will not watch. So these are the circles. These are the persons who will not watch. And if the probability is greater than 0.5, these crosses. These are the population who have watched the match, who will watch the match. So yeah. So basically, and then comes this population who will still not watch even if the probability is greater than 0.5, because for them they are not so passionate about FIFA. For them, thresholds could be greater than 0.8. If only if it is a too important premium league, they will watch it. And whereas the 0.4. So basically, what I'm trying to explain here is, so basically it helps in learning the bias. What is bias of a line? Bias is nothing but an intercept. So this is basically intercept, which is shown here. So when we put x equals to 0, so whatever the value comes, it is called the intercept. So because of only this population, instead of drawing the straight line from here, we have to draw this line over here. So our equation of line changes. And so what was the objective of perceptron? Basically to learn this decision boundary. We will see it later how it learns the decision boundary. But for now, it will learn the decision boundary. And out of that, this is the slope of the decision boundary, and this is the intercept. So if I give you a new point here, that means this is in the left side of decision boundary. That means he will not watch. This is my cursor. So if the point is here, where my mouse pointer is here, that means it is in the downside of decision boundary. So decision boundary is this one. So he will not watch. If the point is here, then he will watch it. So any doubt so far? As it is an important concept. So people should understand what is classification, what is the main objective of the problem, what we are trying to learn. Let me know so that I can go ahead. So far, so good? Okay. Vijay, actually scrolling is not happening properly.
I don't know.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. If
Hmm.
it's not smooth, even if it's going to the next slide a little quickly, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So basically, so far we have learned that the perceptron, basically any linear decision boundary could be learned through perceptron. So basically, perceptron can help you in building a linear classifier. In short, we can say that. And it could be a regression or a classification. That depends on the type of activation function, which we'll cover later. And so, what are the shortcomings of perceptron? Not basically perceptron, of multi-layered perceptron. So basically, using the multi-layered perceptron, which I showed you here, you can build very complex networks. That is, what do you mean by complex networks? So complex is basically lot of hidden layers. So as I originally stated, that the orange ones are input layer, yellow one input and orange one output, and these all are hidden layers. So the more the number of hidden layers here, and each node is a perceptron. So the more the number of hidden neurons, the more the complex network is, and the more the complex network is, higher the performance of model is. Not necessarily true always, but yeah, mostly. So, for example, if you want to classify cat and dog very accurately, we should come up with more complex networks. So, but the problem could happen is like you could not come up with a feature importance in that case. You can build a basically highly performing model, but in case you want feature importance, like feature importance as in which feature was important to classify cat or dog, it was shape of nose or it was height or what it was, you can't tell in neural networks that importance. So sometimes in industry there are use cases where when like getting feature importance is more important than building a highly performing models. So that's the basically shortcomings and limitations of neural network. Okay, so now we will cover so what is happening inside a perceptron. So if you see the top layer, so this x1, x2, x3. Let's go back to the same example of the football match. So x1 is what? Premium League, and x2 is whether Manchester is playing or not, and x3 is whether it's a fair game or not, friendly game or not. So these are nothing but basically input features. That's why they are represented as an input layer. So why I have written as none comma 3? Because there will be a lot of inputs. So the initial thing like how many rows are there as written generally as none. That is called batch size. We can see that later. So now you can take that as 3 is the feature. So there are 3 features over here. So for each feature there will be a weight, and then that will go to the output layer. So in perceptron there are only 2 layers, no hidden layer. Basically, there is no layer here. So this is input layer, this is hidden layer. So now this is, sorry, output layer. So now output layer except input layer, all layers have basically this cross section into it. So Z is nothing but it is Wx or XW plus B. Basically, you need not to worry right now how should you multiply. Basically, that generally code takes care of that when you implement it. So and G is the activation function. So now why you are using activation function? So what is the objective? You want to classify. So you want to classify whether that person will be watching the Premium League or not. So how do you classify? Basically, you come up with a probability. And what is the probability range? Basically, it is between 0 and 1. So, but Wx plus B could be any number. It could be till 100 or it could be negative. So what you want to do is you want to squash it between 0 and 1. So let me show you how does it squash. Yeah. So these are all activation functions. See, this x-axis is what? Wx plus B. Yeah. So all the input came multiplied by the weights and collected in Z. Collected in Z. And then an activation function would be applied over Z. So what is activation function? There are lot of activation functions that consider sigmoid. So see, x-axis is a wider range, minus 10 to 10, but it squashed the output. What is y? In between 0 and 1. Because 0 and 1, in between 0 and 1, it has squashed the output because you want probability. So understanding that, we got like in output layer, we should use sigmoid. Can we use tanh in the output layer? Obviously no, because tanh is basically squashing the output between minus 1 and 1, but there are no probabilities associated in the scale of minus 1 to 0. What about ReLU? So basically ReLU again you can't use because it is going till 10. So generally sigmoid and softmax. So softmax is the counterpart of sigmoid. Basically sigmoid is used for binary classification, whereas softmax is used for multi-classification. We'll cover in detail later, like how is softmax different from sigmoid. But for now, sigmoid and softmax are used generally in the output layer because the output layer is the layer which gives you the probabilities. So we have understood what are the weights. Okay, these are the weights. There is one more comes from here, like, let me annotate it. Yeah, one more extra comes here. That is called bias. Yeah, why was there bias? Because I told you there are different thresholds for each person. Like one who is very passionate about the football league, so he will watch whether for him it doesn't matter. So for considering that, okay, yeah. So sigmoid will be used in output layer. These generally are used in hidden layer and would be only applicable in case of multi-layer perceptron. So yeah, we have seen what is the weight. So weight is nothing but the strength of the particular feature. And what is bias? We have seen activation function. We have seen. Okay. So any doubts so far? Any Q&A? Am I going too fast? Okay. So we shall continue. This slideshow is not working. Yeah. Okay. So what is happening here is same example. like we are trying to classify this animal as a cat or dog. So let's say these three circles are the input layer. So one could be the shape of nose, something, one could be the height, one could be the color, and more the features over here, the better the learning of the network is. Because we ourselves from our childhood, like how we have understood, because we have seen a lot of cat and dogs, and internally in our mind we have seen like we have to, in our mind set the patterns like so many features, and then we are able to distinguish. In the same way, if we are able to provide, so in our case we learn the features implicitly, but machine is not smart enough, it can learn the features implicitly. We have to provide the features explicitly. So basically we have to ourselves come up the features and then provide. And okay, and then these weights for each feature, there will be weight the going from input node. What is this layer called as a hidden layer? So hidden layer is basically trying to learn the representation, basically trying to differentiate where between these animals. And then finally, this is output layer, which is responsible for the classification purpose. So basically, the hidden layer is all responsible for the learning, but it doesn't mean in perceptron there will be no learning, because in perceptron there is no hidden layer. So in perceptron there will be learning, but slightly lesser. So as compared to the neural network, complex neural networks, because in perceptron there are weights going outside to the output layer. So those weights will have some learning over there. But in case of neural network, there are a lot of hidden layers over here. So the learning would be more. So what does lesser learning and more learning means? Lesser learning means you are able to replicate. So what is machine learning? Suppose if I give you a function wx 3x plus 2, so you are able to calculate the values. Like you are able to calculate y. Basically y is equal to 3x plus 2. But if I give you a lot of values, basically learning the underlying function is called machine learning. So a perceptron would be able to learn linear kind of functions, linear kind of decision boundaries, whereas in case of uh, neural networks, complex neural networks, it would be able to distinguish between non-linear decision boundaries, non-linear functions. Okay, let's see how it does so. Again, let's stick to one example. So don't get confused. Theta naught is nothing but a bias. It is generally represented by theta naught, or so this one is represented by maybe sometimes B, sometimes by beta naught, or sometimes by, yeah, these are things used. And theta 1 is nothing but W. These are the weights for that feature. So don't get confused. Yeah, so let's consider only one feature, which is like probability of a premium league, or which is X. We are trying to predict. Let's say, let me show you an example. Yeah, so let's say we initialize theta naught of and theta 1 randomly, and suppose then what happens is, because you have initialized randomly, so let me again go back to the slide. Yeah, so you can see the correct equation of the boundary here. Let me pull it. Okay, the correct equation of the boundary is this, right? There are a lot of decision boundaries I have made here with the dashed lines. Are they right? No. So they are basically they are nothing but theta naught and theta 1. What is theta naught? This intercept. And what is theta 1? This slope. The slope is theta 1. So only one would be right. And the one which would be right, it will have minimum error, because it is right. So you have done minimum error. Basically, if you have classified correctly, so error is 0. But we here calculate error for a lot of examples. So we predict for 500 animals, let's say. We came up with 400 right. So error is something here 400. So let me show you this. So basically, this data set I will be using later. Just a minute. This is nothing but a wine data set in which you have been given with like alcohol content in the wine and a lot of other features. You're not concerned about them right now. So cultivator is something you can consider of a brand or something type of wine. So basically there are three types of wine here, 1, 2, 3, these are the labels. So what is the objective here? Again, classification model. What kind of classification? Multi-classification, because there are three labels over here. So what I'm saying is, what I did is I initialize the weights randomly from, if you see this diagram, so there are two things here. So we calculate basically error after predicting. So this is the sum, this is as theta x we have predicted basically, and then we calculate the error basically. So error is basically in this case is predicted and expected output. So y is actual and as theta x is predicted. So error is, but this cost function would be used in case of regression, because in regression you use sum of squared errors, and in case of classification you use cross entropy error. There are reasons behind that which I would not be able to cover in today's class because from short on time. So basically it is used to make the function convex. Yeah, so basically you tries to plot for each theta naught and theta 1. You can see for each weight. I have plotted only 2D diagram here. So there would be bias as well. So you can plot 3D plot basically. So for whichever cross entropy error is minimum, that is your equation of decision boundary. Cross entropy error is used basically for classification problems, and squared loss is used basically for regression problems. So any doubt so far? Okay. So yeah. So the question is, we have understood, okay. So for now you can understand cost function is nothing but an error. For now you can understand. So error, you made it while predicting things. And you predicted for lot of theta naught and theta 1. Basically theta naught, theta 1 nothing but bias and this weight. So theta naught is bias and theta 1 is a weight. So how do we come up, how to reach the expected output? Basically, how to reach the right theta naught and theta 1, right bias and weight. How to reach the right decision boundary. How to reach to this right decision boundary. So that is the question here. So I have written over here logistic regression cost function. This is nothing but a cross entropy cost function. For now, you can leave it. So we'll try to understand how we can minimize the cost function. Basically error, you can understand. What is error? Basically actual minus predicted. You can take it in that way. Wait, I've got some responses. Could you explain HX? So HX is nothing but it's a predicted value. So basically you predicted for each using each theta naught and theta 1. It is nothing but y hat. So more doubts. Can you tell me more on activation function? Okay. So basically I told you like if we talk about use of activation function in output layer, it is basically used to squash. Okay, so he has written the question here like, can you tell me more on activation function? What if my predicted value is greater than 1? Do I need to scale that? So that's what activation function is all doing about. So suppose I showed you a So see, your question is so what if my predicted value is greater than 1? First of all, if you use sigmoid activation function in the output layer, it's not coming. So you will not get value greater than 1. And it's mandatory to use a sigmoid activation function in the output layer. In the hidden layer, it doesn't matter. Whatever comes, it doesn't matter for you. So did I answer your question? Hey Anshul, did I answer your question or is there something? So basically scaling is taken care of by.
Just one more quick query. You answered my question. And so, for example, if I'm doing an image classification and let's say it's a matrix of red, blue, green, okay?
Okay.
In that case, definitely your negative value won't make any sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we deal with those?
So basically, you are trying to predict whether the that image is red, blue, or green. Multi-classification problem, right?
Right, correct.
Correct. So you will use basically a softmax extension of sigmoid. So let's boil down that problem to only two classes, red and green. So then you will use sigmoid over there. So if negative value comes here, you can see what is the output here. Output is in between 0 and 1.
Okay. Yeah.
Got it, no? So let me again go back to the basics. Okay. So what is Z? Till Z there will be sigma of Wx, right? Plus B. Bias will always be there from the side. Is this visible? Okay. So there will be an activation function over here. So this activation function, because it is an output layer, it's responsible for squashing the output into probabilities, and for that use of sigmoid is necessary because this is nothing but Z. So for each value of Z, it has been squashed to 0 and 1. That's what we wanted. Any more questions?
Guys, please don't unmute yourself. Just ping your questions, and if you have understood, just answer yes or no.
Any more questions? So far, so good.
I think you can move ahead, Nishant. Anyways, we are going to keep last 10-15 minutes for Q&A. So guys, note down your questions, whatever you have, and you can just throw your questions, shoot your questions at Nishant in the last 10 minutes once we are done with the notebook.
So as I showed you the last image, like there were a lot of boundaries. Yeah. So each having different weight and different intercepts. And so the same thing I plotted here, there will be, just forget about what is cross entropy. This is basically an error. So we will try to reach this minima, whatever it is minima over here. So it's not clearly visible, but yeah, we want to reach here. So we can't find out the weight, which will be responsible for this. Maybe we have to start with here, with this weight, or we have to start with somewhere else. So video bottom. Okay. So yeah, so how do we do that? So imagine like you are on the top of a hill and you have to go to the bottom of the lake. And good thing or bad thing is that you are blindfolded. So how do you do that? Reach there. So by hill, the y-axis represents here what? Errors. When you are doing minimum error, when you reach to the lake. What is the x-axis? Basically different weights. So how do you reach there? Basically, you will stretch your leg, try to move in a direction where your leg is more slanted and it goes towards downside, right? So that technique is called gradient descent. So basically, descent. You're trying to descend in a direction where gradient is lower. So that's why it is called gradient descent. Wait, I have some chat. Okay. So let's see how do we apply gradient descent in case of cost function. Cost function nothing but an error function for now. So error function calculated over all test examples, overall test examples, and then yeah. So let's say we start from this weight. We can start from anywhere, right? Right from here. from here or from here. It's random, and we have to reach this point minimum. So how do we do that? So basically, it's like if you see this figure, so this is JW. It's got erased a bit. So JW, it's nothing but an error which is a function of weights. Weights, nothing, you can write it as a theta as well or beta as well. One and the other are same thing. And you are trying to reach this global minima where you make lesser error and you reach to the perfect decision boundary. So you started from here. So you find the gradient, basically slope over here, and you do this basically. This is very important. So what you are trying to do is you subtract. Alpha is something learning rate, which I will explain, and del by del theta j. So theta j is nothing but weight. I told you it is written generally W theta beta. Everything is same. W theta beta. So yeah. So you will find the slope over here, this, and you subtract. Alpha is some learning rate. So basically this is a parameter, like how fast you want to come here. We can cover this in detail later. But for now, the basic objective is to try to subtract from the weight itself what slope of the cost function with respect to weight, which will help you getting close to the global minima. So you can ask me, there are reasons here, like why should I always subtract? If I am here, if I subtract, I will not go. Let me check chat. Okay. So basically, if I'm started from here, if I subtract, I will go in the left direction. But what happens is, if you clearly observe, yeah. So what is this angle? Obtuse angle, tan theta. Basically, any angle greater than 90 degree. What is tan of 100 degree? It's negative, right? So what will happen is it will move the theta into right direction. What is theta? W. So basically you will move in the right direction. So here the slope is tan of 100 degrees, basically negative. So you move in the right direction, and here you move in the left direction because here this angle is acute. This is acute angle, less than 90 degree. This part, got it? Any doubts in this part? If learning rate is high and overshoot minima, yeah. So basically you have to adjust the learning rate. The learning rate should be lower. So what we use is here I saw some questions. People are raising concerns like if the learning rate is high, we will overshoot the minima. So basically, their technique is called adaptive learning rate. So we see like how much changes are happening in the cost function. So for now, wait. Yeah. So what is the slope? If it is like we basically increase alpha in case there are lesser changes. So we can cover it later. So for now, you can see there are adaptive learning rates as well, which depends what is the gradient of the cost function with respect to theta. So there, when we code, there are parameters by which we can pass, like please use adaptive learning rate rather than normal learning rate. So did I answer your question? And yeah, and there's one more thing. So in this diagram, this is what basically convex function. So convex function is a function which have only global minima. Yeah, let me answer that question. So he has asked, how do you decide what learning rate to take? How do we find if we are at local minima, global minima? Yeah, so basically in case of neural network, you need not to find whether you are at a node, local minima, global minima, because what happens is you use batch gradient descent. So what is batch gradient descent? Batch gradient descent is something you provide batches. Like suppose you have 124 examples. So you will pass 30, 30, 30 examples. So what happens is, even if like gradient descent is stuck in local minima, it will take you out from there, the other batch. So what happens is, you always check if it is consistently not reducing, it's not converging for all batches, then only it is stuck there. But in case if other batch comes, it will take it out from the local minima and make you reach to the global minima. Because for global minima, every batch will have convergence. Did I answer your question? For now, maybe 50-50%. Yeah. Anshul, did I answer your question? So let me show you the local minima examples. Okay. So what we have done so far is, how do we reach to the optimal weights, and like how is the wait, you can ask me how is this convergence defined. Basically this is defined in a way like, if theta doesn't changes below a certain threshold, those thresholds are chosen, generally those are fixed, like generally varies with the 0.01%, depends like how much control you want on the network. So if it doesn't change beyond below that, so you keep it fixed. So that's how convergence is defined. Shall I move ahead? Okay. So drawbacks of single layer perceptron, which I've already covered. For example, this is XOR. So circle represents class 1, cross represents class 0. Can you draw a linear decision boundary here? Obviously no. You try drawing here, no. Trying there. So what kind of perceptron would you like to use here? Basically multi-layer perceptron. This is nothing but a neural network. Or you can use support vector machines as well with a kernel trick, non-linear trick basically. But yeah, definitely logistic regression can't work. So logistic classifiers can't work. So logistic regression is named as logistic classifier as well. So there are reasons why it is called regression, though it is not regression. We can cover that later. So logistic classifier can also build a decision, linear decision boundary only. It doesn't have capacity to build non-linear decision boundaries. Okay, so this was, I was just showing you how does the flow of a two-layer neural network works. Yes, definitely. Actually, you can use kernel tricks over there. For XOR gate, you have to use RBF or maybe polynomial kernels. What actually kernel trick does is, suppose a dimension of data. For XOR gate, it is 2 features. So it brings 2 features to 3 features. It translates them to 3 dimensions or maybe higher and makes them linearly separable. And that's how kernel trick works. Yeah. So this is basically a flow of input data in 2-layer neural network. You can see this orange one input layer, this is the output layer, hidden layers black. Is there any activation function in input layer? No. Any layer except input layer will have activation function over there. So output layer will definitely have sigmoid and softmax depending on binary and multi-classification. And input middle layers could have tanh, ReLU. Just a minute. tanh, ReLU, anyone. So there are different applications of each, where to use each one. But which will be covered later. So what we saw here is, let me go ahead. Yeah. So just to give you a brief idea, the flow of the network here is, yeah. So these are the input features. Again, let's consider an example of football match prediction. Is now instead of using single perceptron, we are trying to build two-layer perceptron. Why two-layer? Output layer is never counted as a layer. So one is the input layer, and this is one hidden layer. That's why it's a two-layer network. Perceptron is one-layer network because there is only input layer over there. So there are corresponding weights going outward from the input node, and so Z, as I already stated, that Wx plus B, so which is could be written here. So there are logics to write the shape of these weights and the features. So, and then there is an activation function G over here, which could be anything, tan H, ReLU, sigmoid, softmax, as this is not an output layer. So why do we use activation function here, not in output layer? Output layer we have understood, okay, we use because like we want to squash the output between whatever is coming between 0 and 1 because we want the probabilities. But why do we use here activation function? Because this is responsible for learning the non-linearities. So as you have heard of, composition of two linear functions is linear. So if we don't introduce non-linear here, so non-linearity here, it will never learn anything. And so basically we can use sigmoid, which I've written here, A of G Z. So basically it is written as Z1 here, and the output which comes after applying activation function is written as A1. And similarly the output which comes here A2, and this is Z2. And yeah, so basically this is writing the equations and understanding. Yeah, just a minute, I've got some doubt. Difference between Z and G in layers. Yeah, so Z is nothing but it's a collecting layer. So it collects from input, multiplies with the weights. It's a kind of sigma layer. Let me go to the previous slide. See, this is, yeah, sigma. So actually I have done this cross section. I've pulled this Z inside this only. So Z is nothing but a sigma layer, which sums from input Wx plus B, and G is something where non-linearity is getting learned. So it's basically squashing the inputs. So let me go to that. So it's basically changing the dimension over here. So yeah, so let's go to the use of perceptron in industry. That's it for classification. So there are a lot of classification problems in industry, and we have to use there. So as we are running short on time, so I would cover a practical case study, which is about has been taken from UCI machine learning repository. So it's basically about wine class prediction. Let me directly jump to the data set. So basically these are the libraries which I have imported, which will be used below, and so this is some function which has some uses. We will cover it later. So here I have loaded the wine data set, which looks like, so what is the objective here? The objective here is to basically predict what would be the wine cultivator basically type. So there are three types over here. That is a distribution over here by utilizing the features. So what is the label here? This cultivator, which is also called a response variable. And there are a lot of features here. So the alcohol content will decide and all. You'll see it later. So let me see the chat. Can it be used for perceptual mapping, a technique used in marketing? Perceptual mapping. What is that actually? I'm not sure. Can you brief explain about it? Then maybe. Hey Sayed, can you brief about it? Maybe, or we can cover it later, maybe in the question and answers. Yeah, so this is a basically distribution of the wine, and then this is some statistics done on wine data set. Basically, how many count of rows are there? What is the mean of each using dot describe. Moving over to so basically I'm trying we will see some exploratory analysis, and what I've done is for now I've called class 1 as 1 and the other classes as 0. So it's a diagrammatic type. Okay, wait. Yeah, so let us cover that question later. Yeah, so I'm taking a subset of features, and I've converted like wine prediction problem into binary classification for just exploratory analysis. So basically anything not equals to 1 is called as 0 and 1 is 1. So, and this is a distribution of 0 and 1. So basically if we see here, see what is the x-axis represents here? Alcohol content. So what does this say? The class 1 has higher alcohol content than other classes. So there is some differentiation. Basically, alcohol content has a power to differentiate between two different classes. So that's what this diagram is explaining all about. And you can see from here as well. Class 1 alcohol mean content is more than other class alcohols. So definitely this feature has an important power in itself. Flavonoids is again something present in the flowers, fruits, and yeah. So here's a reverse case. So flavonoid content is more. So basically it's a class 1. So that means there are some differentiating factors here. That means this feature has some explanation power over there. Why not we utilize it and build some classifier, a good classifier? Maybe we can build a logistic classifier, we can build support vector machine, any kind of classifier we can build. But for now, let's deep dive into two of them, logistic regression and multi-layer perceptron. So what I've done is I've taken all the training, I've dropped the response variable, that is cultivator, from the training dataset. I've taken it into X and labels into Y. Yeah, so this is main part. Split data into train and test. Why do we do that? That's because from the data which we have learned, there is no meaning to predict on that dataset because that's something which we have die hard. So test is something which we have not seen still. So we would like to train our model on the training data set and then predict on the test how it is performing. So there is standard libraries for that, train test split, which basically splits the feed data. Yeah, so the question here is from Sajad, how do we stratify the split? So basically let me first put here, so there are libraries called stratified random split. So which takes care of the basically what is a stratified split here is, so maintaining the proportion of the actual classes. So here for example the classes distribution for 0 and 1 was slightly skewed. So 0 is this one and 1 is this. If I randomly split, it can happen, the proportion can change. So stratified split, we do have libraries for the stratified split, and we can split using that, which will try to maintain the same proportion of the original proportion. So we got train and test now. Yeah. So now comes why we are doing standard scaling. So this is very important. This is nothing but a normalization feature. So this basically originally arises from the statistics background. So if I ask you to compare scores of two different exams, maybe CAT and GATE, let's say not even CAT and GATE, let's say GATE electronics and GATE computer science. Can you compare that? No. Obviously, it doesn't mean like one who has scored 500 in GATE CS is brighter than one who has scored 500 in GATE electronics, because we don't know how hard that exam was. So we don't know how there could be that it could happen that the CS was more difficult than the electronics exam. Then what we have to do is we have to bring them to a common scale so that we can compare. So that's what standard scaling does. So it brings two different quantities, basically comparing apples and oranges. So two different quantities on the same scale. Only we can compare 5 is greater than 6 because they are on the same scale. But in the case of marks, 500 in CS and electronics are not on the same scale, though marks number is same, because the exam difficulty pattern could be hard. It could happen that the average marks in the CS is 400, whereas in electronics it's just 350. So that person has performed better than his average. So here the same case is there. You can see, let me go here. You see here mean of each feature is different. Cultivator is around here, alcohol is, cultivator is fine, that is response variable, but alcohol range is slightly different than malic acid. Each is on different scale, and proline is on 746. We need to bring them to a common scale. This is basically the formula for like x minus mu, where mu is the mean of that feature itself, and sigma is the standard deviation of that feature. Any doubts on this?
Just a moment, Nishant. I wanted to launch a short poll with the learners. So, guys, I'm just launching a short poll which has just 2 questions. So please choose the preferred option and let me know. I'm just launching it now. It won't take more than 10 seconds. So you just choose your opinion and let me know. You must be seeing it on your screen. Great. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Shall I go ahead, Vijay?
No, it's only for the participants actually.
No, for the content.
I beg your pardon, I didn't get you.
Sorry, I was just saying. Okay, it's done.
Yeah, it's done.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, you can continue. Thanks, Nishant. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. So any doubts on why do we use scaling, as in like from a top view? Yeah. That's because, so one people have asked a good question. How do we transform separately? Somewhere we do fit transform, somewhere we do normal transform. So basically, let me explain why it is there. So we do fit transform the training data set. That's because we want to fit on that. And whatever we have fit on that, we just want to, let me explain it through some other example. Like, let's say some categories are there. So we do one hot encoding. One hot encoding is nothing but converting into basically integers and sparse matrix. So let's say type of mangoes, maybe 1, 2, so maybe some other, let's say cars. So like Audi, BMW, there are a lot of categories. So I will convert into one hot encoding basically. So which will be like car underscore Audi, car underscore BMW, car underscore something else, Tata. So now what can happen is, if you don't do, so now you have done fitting over training data set. What can happen is, if you do again fit on the test data set, you can assign Audi as, there could come firstly some new categories, like maybe Tata can come. So if you do fit again, so in this case, it will be like car underscore Tata as well. So the feature space is more than there. So basically, whatever features you have made in the training, you just have to replicate that into test. So that's why you do fit underscore transform. Did I answer your question a bit? But this will generate standard normal varied. So Jeffrey has asked one more question. This is normal variation with the mean 0 and variance 1. No, it doesn't produce. So Z score is basically not in that range. It is mostly in between -3 and +3 for each feature. We'll cover that. So basically, it's between that, not in between. So this is not that standard normalization. So yeah, it will come between -3 and +3. Shall I go ahead? Any more questions? Okay. So now what we have got is basically standard. We have done some scaling. I've already told you why did we do that. That's because we want to bring all features onto the same scale so that there is a better learning. And let me show you in detail also here a bit. So what will happen is, so if I don't scale the features here x1, so in this if you see wx plus b, so the x1 w1 will be very high, then x2 w2. So there are concepts like called back propagation. Okay. Yeah. So there is a back propagation. So there are reasons behind that. So there is a lot of importance will go to one of the feature. So we don't want to give lot of importance to one of the feature. So that we do that. So one question has more come. During predict once model is trained, do I need to school input? Yes. That's because you have trained on the like on a different scale. So you can't actually go and test on a different scale. You need to do that. So if you clearly observe here, firstly I trained on the training data set, right? And then I just transformed into on a training and use the same which one was fit on the training, same function on the test, not different. And I write it as like this also, fit underscore transform. This is also works out because I clubbed both of them into one. So I am trying an MLP classifier, which is direct library over here. Basically, I will try 3-layer network. So yeah, wait. Yeah. So this is the standard library for MLP classifier where we have to pass the hidden layer sizes. There is one more question. This scaling has relation with sample size? No, not really. There's nothing to do with sample size. It's just to bring all features to the same scale. Yeah. So MLP classifier is a direct library. If I pass 13, 13, 13, this count, basically this diagram is not actually representing this. So this count should be 13 here, 13 perceptrons, again 13 here, and there is one more 13. One more 13 will come here. This is actually doesn't represent it, but the more you can pass more hidden layer here, it could happen your network could perform more better. These are all heuristics. You have to try with the different hidden layer sizes. So what happens is, and this maximum iteration. So basically what it is doing is it is kind of gradient descent only. It will start with some weight. I saw you. It will start with some initial weight maybe here. Then it will try to decrease the error. See, it's continuously decreasing the error and reach to very minima. And then after that, convergence will come. So convergence, what I've written is, if the weight doesn't change beyond a certain threshold, that threshold is called can also be set in here. Here you can set the threshold. What is the threshold you want to set? So let me show you here. See, there are a lot of parameters here. Apart from this, what activation function you want to use in the output. So there is what is the learning rate you want to choose. What is the momentum? Momentum is something, some concept which is used for gradient descent to make it fast and slow. Yeah, so there are a lot of things here. So we will covering more detail once we deep dive into perceptron more. So yeah, what is this validation fraction? So for now, so basically test and validation, generally data is divided into three parts, not two. So three parts as in there is train, there is validation, and there is test. Test is something which you have not seen. So train and validation, basically you have gathered data in your company. Now you will divide it into two, train and validation. So basically model will train itself from train and see if it is able to perform on validation. Then you will deploy it and you will see in the coming time whether it is performing on the new examples. Those new examples are test. So basically model is data is always divided into three parts. So pooling is there is one more doubt here, pooling. So are you talking about max pooling and all? So pooling is something different. That happens in convolution neural networks. So that is called max pooling and all, which will be covering as a part of convolution neural networks. This is basic neural network.
Nishant, if you're done like with the code walkthrough and your notebook, I think we can start the Q&A in the next 2-3 minutes.
Vijay, some part is remaining. Can't we extend it 5-10 minutes?
Yeah, that works. Not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, fine. So that is a different part. Those are convolutional neural networks. So again, in neural network, there are two types of neural networks. One is recurrent neural networks and convolutional neural networks, which are not part of our course right now. So what I was covering here is, so basically we pass a validation fraction over here in order that the model can see whether it is able to perform better on the unseen data set. So basically this is also unseen, and because it is learning from this train, and we will plot the loss over here. Yeah, and then we will be predicting on the test data set. Basically test is something which we have not seen. So in this, again, we have been provided with three data sets: train, validation, and test. So now we will be predicting on the unseen data set, and so F score is something which is used for multi-classification problems. So it's nothing but it is combination of precision and recall. And in this case, we got 0.96. So there is one more important concept remaining here is what is overfitting. So basically, why we divide into these all data sets like train and test. So basically consider this test as a validation data set only. So there is one way of division like this. This is the whole data which we have got. We divide into two parts, train and validation. So basically you will train on this part and see how your model is performing here. There is one more type of validation that are called k-fold cross validation. So this is, yeah, so I'm explaining you that. Let me directly switch to this plot for explaining that. So this plot is nothing but you can see in the red line training score and the green line cross validation score. So initially you can see train score is very high. So when the loss is less, that means the score is high. These are negatively correlated. So you can see the training score is very high. Obviously it will be, it has seen the examples. So in the x-axis, you are basically increasing the training examples. And so now you're checking on the validation dataset, which you have pulled apart from your training dataset basically. And so basically if validation dataset is able to increase continuously and run parallelly with the training score, then that means the model is generalized. Otherwise, generalized means it is not overfitting. Otherwise, it means what is overfit. So that means the training data set is very high and validation is very low. So let me annotate it a bit. So like suppose let's say it has been like this, flattened out, maybe like this. That means it's not performing so well, but it is increasing on only in the later part, and I have not plotted it in my head. So it's almost running parallel to that. Let me show you one more example. This is very important part while training neural network. See this diagram. So see on the right side of this, basically in the right side of this, what is this? This is polynomial degree. So polynomial degree is higher when network is more complex. So you can see this is training error has decreased a lot, but cross validation error is not decreasing, it is increasing. That means there is definitely overfitting. The model has just cramped the training examples, but it really doesn't know how to classify for the unseen, basically validation examples. That's where the underfitting is. If you see in the left side, the model is underfitting. Basically, it does not even learn training. Forget about validation set. Any doubts in this? I think I'm done.
Great. I think we can now move on to the Q&A if there's any. If not, then we can just use the 7-8 minutes that we have. And
just a minute, I want to show one point more over here. So I tried logistic regression as well here. So we have tried, this is nothing but some solver in logistic regression. See, we got F1 score 0.95 here, which is slightly less than perceptron, where we have got 0.96. So why? Because neural networks are more complex. If there is like the function, underlying function which we have to learn is nonlinear, the neural network will perform more better. Yeah, now you can raise your questions and I'll be happy to answer that. It's open for questions now.
Great. Guys, you can just ask your doubts via chat with Nishant, then he'll be able to address. I think we have 7-8 more minutes. We can utilize it in the best way. Anyone? Any questions? If not, then Nishant can just Nishant, you can just like tell them what's your current role, what you're doing, like so, might be helpful for them.
Okay, sure. So wait. Can you please tell us again? See, so he has raised the question like how do you decide what learning rate to take. So basically, it's not fixed. It depends like the kind of data set you get. I told you like there are parameters by which you can pass the learning rate to be adaptive. Let me go up. See, so you can see here learning rate equals to constant. If I make it adaptive, that means it will learn on its own. Like it will increase or decrease depending on the requirement. So there is nothing much to worry about it actually, given the Python tools, MLP classifier library, sklearn. So so logistic classic, wait, let me answer that first. So how do you decide what learning rate to take? If you really want to have control of the learning rate in your hands, so you have to basically code your architecture by your own. You have to calculate, you have to write back propagation by your own. You have to see each time what is the cost function coming up and how much it is updating the theta. And if the update in the theta is quite high, then maybe you have to decrease the learning rate so that each time there should be lesser decrease in theta. And then probably, yeah, the same way, like you have to do a lot of manipulations over there. to write. How do we find if we are at the local minima, global minima? You really need not to do that, because the code will itself take care of that. The batch gradient descent itself takes care of that. It doesn't stuck into the local minima. That's what good thing about neural network is. So if we use batch gradient descent, it doesn't stuck into the local minima. And let me show you. Yeah. So basically, these all classifiers use batch gradient descent. So what happens is, even if one batch is stuck in local minima, what happens is the gradient of the other batch will take it out from the local minima and make it reach the global minima. Because what happens is, see, this repeat until convergence. This is calculated for all batches. So what do you mean by batch? Suppose I have 1000 examples. I will divide into 100, 100, 110. So for each batch, I will calculate this. And until unless for each batch it is not converging, not then only I will say it is my minima, that is global minima, or else I will move away. So actually you need not to worry much about that, but you should be so batch is itself mini batch only. So in batch you pass like both are same, like there is no difference in that. Yeah, there is one more question here. Logistic classifiers have lesser precision. Logistic classifiers will definitely have lesser precision when, like for example, you build logistic classifier for XOR gate. Let me show you. So suppose you build a logistic classifier for this. So how will it build its decision boundary? Maybe it will see, okay, fine. Let this point go wrong. Let one point go wrong. Let me find the best possible solution, this. So precision is less now because it can't classify. Logistic classifier can only separate it using a linear boundary. So what is best possible linear boundary here? It has misclassified this, right? So that's why its precision is less. Whereas in case of neural network, they will learn this boundary. So their precision is high because they can actually classify correctly. Did I answer your question?
Guys, please fill the feedback form that I've shared with you. It's very important that you give your feedback, how the session was, and, so that we can improve. Thanks a lot. So Nishant is almost done, and you all asked very good questions. Thanks a lot for that. So anything else you would like to ask, or we are good to end it? Thank you, Nishant, for this wonderful session. And to the guys who participated today, we'll be keeping regular sessions like these in the coming weeks, in the coming months. And I would like you to participate like you did today. Thanks a lot for being such a wonderful participants. And thank you, Nishant. So I'm ending the meeting now. Okay?
Yeah, bye guys.
Awesome. Congratulations. Thank you so much for watching this video end to end. On this particular channel, you will find everything that it takes to upskill you to become a data scientist. We have the 100% proven recipe. Check out the goodies over here, the workshops, the programs, and there's a number right here. Feel free to call me and I'll be very happy to help you with your journey in upskilling yourself and becoming a data scientist. Hit the subscribe button, click on the bell icon. Just make sure that if you like this particular video, don't forget to like it and follow us socially. I'll be there helping you out with how to make that transition happen for you.
Log on to Grey Atom's learning platform to unlock more content. Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for regular updates.